What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Chuds BBQ. My name is Bradley Robinson, and today I'm going to show you how I made this beautiful, delicious, crunchy bark, juicy, hopefully amazing beef brisket cooked on my reverse flow smoker. That's right, folks. We're about to find out how good that smoker really is. Coming up. This is a brisket. Pat it dry. And what I got here is a USDA prime brisket. Picked this up at my local HEB. Really nothing too fancy going on here. Kind of small, kind of thin, but pretty typical brisket. So, as always, first thing we need to do is get this thing trimmed up, starting by taking off this big chunk of fat on the backside. You know, love that sound. You can hear it wanting to pull out. It's like seam butchery. Out it comes. And then we'll start tackling some of this extra fat and silver skin on the backside. You know, and of course, just rounding off any corners, taking off anything that's kind of flappy or hanging on. You know the drill, folks. See me trim plenty of briskets on this channel before. Definitely want to move quick though, especially on a hot Texas summer day like today. Looking pretty good to me. Flip it over. Make sure it's sitting flat. Take out this big chunk of fat right where the point meets the flat. Spin it this way. Flatten up that point muscle. Scoop out some of this fat. And just make it look nice and clean and nice and pretty. Not too much extra fat on this thing. Come back to that in a little bit while we give this thing some shape, because we definitely don't want this super thin end staying on there. Great for burgers, great for sausage. Round off that point. The point of the flat. Take a look at that fat cap. Looking pretty good. Take that down a little bit towards the end here. Round it off. Scalp it at the very last second. Give the old chud scrape. And there we go. That's looking pretty good. Got some nice shape to it. Good amount of fat on there, but not too much fat. This point's looking a little mangled, but sometimes that is just how they come. Might do a little more minute work on that, but other than that, I think it's time to get this thing seasoned up. As for seasoning today, we're going with the classic SPG. That's 2 parts 16 mesh black pepper, 1 part diamond crystal kosher salt, and 1/2 part granulated garlic. And no need for a slather today. This stuff seems to stick just fine without it. And we're just gonna go on with a nice heavy coating. And this is exactly pretty much how I always do my briskets. Same trim, same rub, not doing anything different, knowing that it's going on to the reverse flow. That way we can get a pretty good comparison to how my briskets usually come out. Flip it over and get the top side as well. And please, folks, don't forget the sides. Rookie move. And that is looking pretty much perfect to me. Let's fire up the pit. And on the pit we go. Gonna go fat cap up, fatty side toward the fire, which I think makes sense. Gonna go right here, right in the sweet spot, and I think this should work out just fine. I think we're gonna follow a pretty typical cook schedule today, starting out a little bit lower, around 225, 250, nice and smoky, help get that bark set, and then we'll slowly ramp it up all the way close to 300 towards the end. But we're just gonna kind of play it by ear and see how it looks. So we'll check back in a little bit. All right, we're about 5.5 hours into this cook. So far, I've only had to throw 2 logs on to maintain temps, but as you can see, we're dipping down. So, time to add 2 more. And so far, this brisket's looking pretty good. Probably should have filmed this before throwing those logs on, but bark is definitely not looking as dark as I would have guessed. And we've got some pooling forming, which usually doesn't happen to me, but could be a fluke. We'll pour that off. I've already poured it off a few times. Bottom's looking pretty good. And we're definitely gonna have a bald spot on this brisket, which is a bummer. Let's see what we're reading. Whoa, 168, 165, 165. Yeah, it feels super tough and not a very dark bark on there. Not as much smoke as I was expecting. But nothing's looking too crispy on either ends. Looking all right. So I guess we're just gonna push forward. I'll check back in. All right, we're about 8 hours into this brisket cook at this point. And I just tempted, it's rocking around 185. Crept up pretty quick. Still got that bald spot. Still don't have the nice dark, fat, rendery bark that I usually have on my briskets when I wrap them, but not looking too bad. It's just looking kind of sandy still, which is unique to say the least. Also, it felt really tough still, so I'm not sure if this thing cooked too fast or too hot or what, but regardless, we're gonna give it the old foil boat and let this continue on up, and hopefully that'll help soften up the bottom and allow that fat cap to render down even more. Very interesting, folks. Gotta say. It's been an amazing cook, you know? That thing holds temps really evenly, and it doesn't feel bad, but it does feel different. So I'm gonna throw this back on the pit, probably still rock around 280, and let this thing cook all the way to tenderness. And just like that, about 13 hours into this cook, this brisket is finally probe and tender and looking pretty good. Definitely looking a little different than my typical brisket. It's just still kind of sandy, which is odd. Usually that bark is a lot darker. Definitely got hit pretty hard on the fatty end, so we will see how this came out. But for now, on this rack it goes into my toaster oven to hold overnight at 150 degrees for a nice long heated overnight rest. We'll check back in on this tomorrow. We're about 13, 14 hours into this rest, and I think it's time to see how this brisket came out. And as you may notice, I ended up wrapping this thing in plastic last night, and that's for a few different reasons. I do this sometimes because this thing tends to stink up the house as it's resting in my toaster oven, but also because it was kind of crunchy on top, a little more so than usual. I thought this might trap a little steam and help it out a little bit, but I guess we will find out. Ooh, feeling pretty good on bottom, actually. Let's take a look at that. Looking juicy, feeling pretty good. Got some good wiggle factor to it. Yeah, feeling better about this than I was last night. Still a little crumbly on top, which is kind of odd, but maybe if we dunk some tallow on it, that'll help. Oops. Oh no. What have I done? Not too shabby. All right, folks, I think it's time to see. We'll start by going right down the middle here. Ooh, still got a pretty crunchy bark. Not too bad, looking juicy, a little crumbly on this exterior edge there. But all in all, good bark, beautiful smoke ring. Nothing wrong with that. Lean, looking all right. Little shreddy, but you know, I was mostly worried about that underside, and that seems to be doing pretty well. Definitely feeling a little dry, but sometimes that's the way it goes with the lean brisket. Yeah, not too shabby. And of course, you gotta go for the fatty side. Looking all right. Definitely got blasted on top more than I was expecting. Get some burn ends. The bark has a weird texture to it. Not like the crunchy bark texture. Can't quite figure it out. But if you look at it, it looks like it's starting to peel away, which is kind of interesting. Get another couple slices into this fatty. I can't quite put my finger on it. I think like the edges here got dry and the top got dry. I think it just cooked too hot and fast, if I'm being honest with you, because there is no fat to be seen. You know, we even got a smoke ring up top. A little bit right there, kind of crumbly. Not the worst brisket I've ever cooked. That is for sure. Yeah, that looks like trash. Feathery. Interesting. Yeah, now I'm starting to find that underside where it got toasted. Shreddy, beef jerky-like. But let's give it a little taste, shall we? Ooh. Oh, look at that. You hate to see it. That's that baffle plate in action for you, folks. All in all, smoke flavor is there. It's definitely barky, nice and salty, nicely seasoned. I think with a little tweaking, this could work out well. But let's get some other opinions. All right, ladies. Y'all have been eating my briskets for like 10 years at this point. This one is the first brisket off my new cooker, and I want you to be brutally honest.
Okay.
And see how it compares to normal.
I definitely want a burn end.
I'm gonna start with definitely some fatty.
Yeah, a good one. Oh, baby. I haven't had brisket in so long.
I know.
Buns.
Oh, buns, hun.
Homemade.
Yeah.
It's better than I can remember. And
Really?
I feel like it's always really good, but I do feel like, what is different? Why am I enjoying this in a different way? What is that?
So this is just off my reverse flow pit that I built in the garage there.
So it's a new, like,
It's just a new kind of smoker, yeah.
more evenly cooked, more evenly, like, flavored.
How's the smoke flavored?
Like, the burnt.
It's good. It's not as like aggressively like
Yeah.
smoke in your face. It's kind of like a nice. It's there.
The
It
grandmas
adds
will like
balance.
it. They'll be like, oh, wow.
Yeah, like
perfect.
some people, not me. I feel like they think the pepper is like spicy.
Yeah.
That's not the case here.
This feels, oh my gosh,
It's very delicious.
beautiful.
See, for me, as one who's cooked many briskets, I was thinking that it was a little bit more crumbly than my previous ones.
It feels like
Like-
a sous vide. Like, that's why I'm going with the evenness.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
even the burnt in the middle and this everything. It's all feels just as soft, just as
That's a good note. I
delicious.
did wrap it in plastic wrap last night, so that may be it. But all in all, you know, I think, is it drastically different? No. Did it
No.
cook different? A little
Brisket
bit.
is brisket, and brisket
Yeah.
is always good.
You always nail it, babe.
Oh yeah.
This is a rare sight. One, finishing a video in the daytime.
I know, I'm
and
proud
two,
of you.
with 3 ladies and a dog.
There's 3 of us.
The only thing missing is a Miller Lite. I'd say.
Miller Lite. I mean, it goes with everything.
Miller Lite. Now, what is your favorite ways to eat brisket? Are you, like right now, we're just going off a board. But do you like it with a sandwich, a fold over?
I like it alone.
I think it just depends on my mood. Normally, I think alone, but right now, I was craving some carbs.
Yeah, I'd say just kind of straight off the plate.
With some Leroy and Lewis beef barbecue sauce. And some pickles, of course. Do you think we could eat this whole thing between us four?
If I hadn't eaten today, yeah.
Yeah. If this
For
is my only
sure.
meal of the day, probably.
Oh, Carl!
We got brisket.
Oh, wait.
Our normal hole.
The normal hole.
Family.
When you hear your family.
When you hear your family.
And you
I'm not gonna finish this beer, so it's up to you, Carl.
Oh, don't make me do it. Do you want to do the official taste test?
Yeah. I think it's time for the official taste test.
You don't say.
You can do it. There we go.
All right, folks, and there you have it. Some pretty inconclusive results, but I think we all know if you invite some people over and hand them a big pile of brisket that you cooked yourself on a smoker that you built with your own 2 hands, they're likely not going to turn around and say that it's terrible. But we all saw when I was slicing into it, that bottom got pretty toasted. The bark rendered kind of weird. It cooked in a very similar time frame to my traditional brisket, but it just wasn't quite as tender. The bark wasn't nearly as dark. And all in all, I think it just cooked a lot faster, which makes sense. You know, everyone I've ever talked to about reverse flow say that that bottom plate just radiates a bunch of heat. So we're cooking from the bottom, we're cooking from the top with that airflow coming up and over the plate. So it's cooking from 3 out of 4 sides, as opposed to this guy, which is just convective heat running over the top of it. So I guess it makes sense, but I think the reverse flow, much like a pellet grill or a Weber kettle, it just cooks differently. And I'm gonna have to figure out how it cooks. Whether that means I flip it over fat cap down for part of the cook, maybe put it in a blocking log, start spritzing. I think the main thing would just be lowering my temps, cooking around 200, 225 for the majority of the cook. But let me know in the comments below if you have more experience with the reverse flow and you have any tips for me. But at this point, I'm getting to know that pit pretty well. So let me know if you want me to do a whole video on my real true thoughts, pros and cons of the reverse flow versus the traditional flow, although you can probably piece it together from all these videos. But I think it's got a time and place. But all that being said, if you enjoyed this video, let me know by hitting that subscribe button. Let YouTube know by dropping a like on this video. If you give this recipe a try for yourself, be sure to tag me on Instagram at Chuds BBQ. I'd love to see what y'all are cooking. Big shout out to all the Patreon members. Thank you for supporting Team Chud and allowing me to keep making all these videos. And until the next time I see you, please go cook something outside. Peace.